Question for you, Lemon. Is there any major suggestions to you that stand out as something that you would really like to do? And obviously, guys, just so you... Actually, I'll give you a little introduction first, more than anything else. Lemon is like our assistant developer for the most part. He's worked on, what does he say, the stuff that nobody else wants to work on?
Yeah, that's, yeah, just removing any, like, slight stuff that could be seen as, like, workshop grant.
Yeah, he's smoothing out all the rough edges.
Like echo code, like the duplicate, that's a whole thing.
That's a whole... We've had many times where there's a patch and the first thing Lemon says, he's like, well, what about the echo stuff? And it's because he put so much work into to making sure that the experience playing as Echo is as smooth as possible. What other features have you worked on, Lemon, in the 66 code that we have, SimHSKW?
Alright, well, I guess a lot of it was like before XD like joined the project.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff got reverted, so I guess anything that isn't that, I mean, I guess making cooldowns look slightly better with like I'm trying to think. I think oh yeah, I had stuff to like limit the visual damage ticks.
Okay. Okay.
And I plan on adding more stuff to different support abilities so they don't need to take ticks at all.
Well, I will point out too what's interesting, and for those who are relatively new or just kind of on the outside here, XD is actually like our head developer. He is a guy that he's done computer science in school. You know, he's been trained to write code for nukes, that international ballistic missile. No, I don't know. I kind of joking there. No, but he's been trained to that level of developer where he's actually really intertwined with the technology. So Lemon and Toastie originally were kind of piecing things together, and that's why Lemon is saying as XD came in, XD took over the workload of like the back-end technology of the code, even though to start too, I'll point out this was his code, right? Or like this was a variation of his code. Ooh, Toastie just put a poll out. How often would you prefer 7HSKW to be updated? Ooh, we'll stop here. What do you think?
I would think like one thing that might be living. I know Toastie will probably be able to deal with it, but a big issue is that like when people are very quick to like suggest changes before they actually have a chance to like play with them.
Yep.
So I mean, I assume Toastie would be like better at like filtering that out, but I think that having like the bi-weekly would be better for us to do that, because then like just means that the ideas that Toastie gets are better and you can work around it easier.
I'm gonna vote for when Overwatch 2 updates. I think slower updates are my thing. I think also bi-weekly looks like a very good path. And welcome in, Nagi. How are you doing today, man? Welcome in. So bi-weekly is kind of your preference there, it seems?
Yeah. Well, I do like having it on with Overwatch updates would also be alright, but I think like even like slight changes in case like a change he makes ends up going badly would be also useful.
Yes, of course. So you can at least...
We want to do, like, you want to work around both balance changes at the same time.
We want to be able to follow up on any potential broken patches. And obviously we can do things like hot fixes here and there, but having like a reliable release schedule probably is it. I will dig in. I do have a comment. We're going to be ripping through a lot of information, Lemon, just so you know, because of course we got people in chat that want to ask some questions. We got a whole bunch of other information. So I will note this question for later. That it's Fox Phoenix has. Mind if I ask a question for the future if possible? You're a support main yourself, more specifically a Mercy and Brig main. Are there any changes upcoming for those two heroes, Mercy or Brig, that, or are there any changes coming for the support role, or at least what do you two developers think? Again, I'll point out I'm not much of a developer. I still work on some of the stuff and I'm volunteering, you know, I can kind of generally get a good idea and help these guys out with some stuff, but Lemon and Toastie are like the main developers here, so I don't want to have stolen valor and be like, yeah, I'm a main developer here or anything. So we will note the support changes in just a small bit, but I want to give you guys more context as to kind of who Lemon is, what he's worked on, how he's worked on certain things, and kind of his idea of the entire workshop game mode itself. Now, Lemon, what do you think, and we'll pull out of this, what do you think has possibly been the most difficult thing when dealing with the workshop and developing 6v6 adjustments?
I guess the most difficult thing.
Yeah.
Probably just general workshop jank. Like, cause it's like a whole new layer of like, how are we gonna do this?
Can you elaborate a little bit more? I have an
guess,
idea.
Like, okay, the biggest example is definitely like the lack of ability to change things in the settings, like the in-game settings.
Okay.
Like stuff like the passives, Echo being able to copy the dupe stats properly. It's like that. Like the whole reason for the Echo code, for example, is because when you duplicate someone as Echo, you don't receive hero changes from the other heroes, like what they normally get in adjustments. At base, they're stuck with like the
defaults
from live. Like for example, like double bubble is still doable in Echo dupe if nothing's changed. So we had to like make a second rule now.
So did you have to? Question. We'll hold at that for just a second. Did you guys have to make a specific system for Echo, or was that relatively easy to copy over from your existing rules?
I mean, it was like easy to copy, but there was a lot we had to do to actually get it to copy. We had to make like a custom variable that tracks the hero you're on, except if you duplicate, or it tracks the duplicate target.
Interesting.
So, like, it actually resulted in a lot of workshop lag. So recently we swapped to making it so it only happens on like certain abilities and the health pools.
Okay.
Just to limit workshop load, so the other rules that aren't like that can be put on the hero. From what I'm in now, it looks like it had a mass improvement. I'm in the test thing right now.
You're playing with it right now.
Okay. It could get to like 100 server load just with one person, and now it's at like 31 at worst. So it's really nice.
Okay. Yeah, we did have a big optimization thing. Speaking of optimization, man, my camera is like actually dying right now. I'm not sure what's going on here. It's way behind. Anyways, I'll try and figure that out a little bit later. Okay. So, are there heroes in particular? Oh my god, why is the camera just failing miserably? I might have to fix this while you're talking here. Are there any heroes in particular that were like exceptionally hard for you to deal with, or for you to change or modify, or I'm sure you know that question, right? You sure some stuff comes to mind right away?
I mean, yeah, I guess Echo is the first one just because of duplicate itself. I guess other than that, I guess like I can't really name one specific hero, but another thing other than Echo is like just Overwatch 2 heroes in general, because their abilities and stuff aren't updated to work with the workshop rules. Like,
so
you can't, like,
yep, go ahead.
Like for example, like certain ability, you can't like track the use of certain abilities because it just doesn't have that functionality.
Can you give us an example of like what abilities in particular?
I guess okay, for example, like Kiriko on the Suzu. Like it just doesn't track when you use the ability. So what I had to do to like track it is check when the button is pressed while the cooldown is at 0. Yeah.
There were a lot of conditions like this that I know, of course, with like Alari and whatnot, where the older heroes are nice because we can actually reference like the events that happen exactly with the ability. And just sorry for stream guys, heads up, you're gonna hear a little ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum over and over again because I'm resetting my camera. Hopefully this fixed the lag. But yeah, definitely the older heroes, and it feels like obviously the heroes that were built during the age of the workshop have a lot more in terms of interaction. So of course Suzu being a big one. Oh my gosh, this beeping is absolutely gonna drive me nuts. Why computer? What is going on today? I don't know why, Lemon. Whenever I want to do anything, like record anything in particular, things just fail to work. Everything works if I'm like, I don't know, just hanging out doing absolutely nothing and want to just meme and do whatever. But like as soon as I want to record anything, we have problems. So I'm just tilted. Okay. So are there any heroes in particular that you would love to see more functionality with? You mentioned like Kiriko's Suzu, where you don't have the ability to interact with it. Like, is there stuff that really on a day-to-day basis when you're looking at this system that just kind of bugs you, that we cannot access, that we cannot get any ability? Like, yeah, just what heroes in particular to you stand out as bad heroes to deal with in the workshop?
All right. I guess I already mentioned Echo and Kiri. I guess from the list. There's a lot of shit.
There's a lot, yeah. It's
yeah, I mean, I guess Maga or Melga or I don't know. The guy with the guns.
Mauga, yeah.
Yeah, Maga. Like one thing that Toastie's been doing is having is trying to remove the damage resist on allies.
Okay.
And that's like really difficult to do. Because one thing I think we're still dealing with is that if you move out of the radius, you still have the effect of Maga's ability, but you still have you don't have the damage to increase to account for it. So like you take less damage when you're outside of the radius.
Okay.
If you were in it.
What just to give people an idea about how we would go about dealing with that. I don't know if you have the exact answers to this, but what would be like the workflow or the process to getting around something like that? What would you guys have to build in theory? I don't even know if you have the answer just yet, but what would you have to do to get around that hurdle? Like the fact that you can't track the damage reduction, or you can't.
Well, yeah. I did give a suggestion to Toastie. I'm not sure how easy it'd be to implement, but pretty much after they like you can track when you're in and out of the radius. So like what you have to do is that you gotta after they leave the radius, you gotta add an additional wait time to that, so that it accounts for the time you still have it after leaving the radius.
So I'm gonna add a little bit more information to for the listeners. When we're talking about the radius, we're talking about finding an abstract point that isn't attached to the ability, getting the distance from the center of the character to the edge of the ability, and tracking that completely independently of the ability. Like, am I correct on that? That's the assumption that we're making on there? Yes.
We do have the radius down, it's just we can't track when they leave it and if they still have the effect.
Yes, yes. The there's a few other examples like this, like for example, Ilari's heal beam. Like we can't actually directly look at the healing that comes from it, but we can put together a condition that is like if you are holding your primary, or sorry, if you're holding your healing, it's the secondary fire, I believe, and if you are aimed at somebody and if you're a distance away from them, then we make the assumption that they are healing, right? There's not really a way for us to go like if healing done. Now there is in many ways, and in the older heroes, putting this on its head, what are some heroes that you consider really, really good to work with? Some stuff that you were surprised how easy it was to go in and make changes.
Oh, that, I guess looking through the roster, I could probably mention any Overwatch 1 hero.
Okay.
But,
Nothing in particular that stands out to you at all?
Not really. I mean, there's a lot of heroes that just work pretty much perfectly. That I don't like. Pretty much every Overwatch 1 hero works as intended.
Okay.
Very little jank at that point.
Very little jank. Now, when you say workshop jank, I've heard you mention this a few times.
Yes.
What do you mean by workshop jank? Just for the listeners to kind of get on the same page, because I have an idea.
Workshop jank is pretty much anything that the player can notice that doesn't look like live.
That doesn't look like live.
Like
it's a bit
like it's a bit nebulous, but like for example, like I guess Lost of Emulator does a good example if anyone knows about that. Like
we're roasting XD for his jank.
I'm not trying to. It's just the fact that it just doesn't look like Overwatch, like actual Overwatch abilities, like the shield they use, the halt. It just looks a bit strange.
There's
like proper projectiles.
Yeah, there's a good example of this, like, we can actually use the original flashbang, right? They actually have to, like, spawn a particle effect out in front of the character. My God, this camera issue's bugging the crap out of me. I don't know what's going on here. It's actually brutal. You're not seeing it or anything like that, but it is so... This is going to look really bad in the video. Whatever. We're podcasting it. That's totally fine. Yeah, that's something that is like external to the existence of Overwatch. It would be something that the average person would look at and go, yeah, that's new. That's not something that is like inside the game. Now, with that being said too, again, we're moving topics really quickly. What workshop jank do you think that you had to like accept in the 6v6 game mode, the 7H SKW game mode?
Hey, Toasty.
Hey, Toasty.
Hello.
What's going on?
The most clear example is probably I guess it's not really as much jank as like projectiles, but Echo Dupe being inconsistent is a big example of like you're gonna notice it most likely.
What are we talking about right now?
I will introduce, let me do the introduction, Toasty, because we're podcasting this. So we actually have a few people that have questions for you. They're like, when's Toasty getting in? We got questions for him. And just a heads up for anybody that doesn't know who we're talking to, the famous people that we're talking to right now. So of course we were just talking with Lemon, who's been kind of like the assistant developer in the entire project. Toasty here is our lead balance guy. He is the number one, actually, he is the director of our 6v6 game mode. Not only has he spent a lot of time balancing the characters and making sure they feel correct, he spent a significant amount of time in the back end building the functions that allow for us to run the heroes the way that they're running. And he's worked closely with XD, of course, from Overwatch 1 emulator, pulling those things over and making them feel, of course, to his standards, what he thinks Overwatch 2 or Overwatch 2 should feel like in the 6v6 game mode. To give you a bit of context, Toasty, coming in late. Welcome in, by the ways. We are talking, or we're kind of going over like the basic tech of the workshop. I asked Lemon, so I'm kind of curious your perspective. What do you think is probably the hardest character to deal with in the workshop so far? So if someone was to come along and be like,
Easy
I have
answer.
easy Lifeweaver, really?
There's no ability you can track for his dash. It just kind of doesn't exist. You can't use event ability jump because it's not bound to that by technically. There's a different control setup you can use as Lifeweaver to do like his legacy controls, and that means you can't actually track him through workshop straight up. So do not look at Lifeweaver code. I'm not proud of that, but it's working sort of for the most part.
Can I ask you then, like, and we'll be very open about this because this is like an open source project. What particularly was the issue and what was the solution to dealing with that?
Oh, the solution? We don't have one.
No, just not.
We basically just don't touch Lifeweaver. This is the best we can do.
Okay.
We don't actually have any way to cleanly interact with any of this kit because of that, just how problematic his dash ability is. And we do have a way to completely remove the healing from it, and we considered just trying to do that and balancing around that instead, just because like it not being there means we can do much more with the rest of the game.
Okay. Is there anything in particular with Lifeweaver that you think needs to be adjusted right away? I know originally, and just some history for listeners, we did take a look at Lifeweaver's tree. It's not that Lifeweaver's kit was crazy, it's just that the stacking with 2 extra tanks meant that as soon as the tree went down, it seemed like it's a fight win. But of course, we didn't have top 500s playing it at the time to be able to figure it out. Again, bringing back to the question, is there anything in Lifeweaver's kit particularly that concerns you? And that potentially, if we have the solution, we can change it up, or we're looking to change it up later.
Sorry, what was the question?
Is there anything in Lifeweaver's kit that stands out to you that needs to be addressed? And if so...
Not really. He's really weak. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but that character just sucks, dude. I don't want to power creep him. He's already got like a massive damage up from live. He's already got better cooldown rotations. He's got the extra shield health that he doesn't have normally. Like he does still have the health on dash, for example. He's got a lot of things going for him, but it's just a fundamentally really bad kit, and there's nothing you can do besides gig above the stats to make him good. But I'm not interested in doing that. That's boring. It's a bad character, and I don't want him to be good. So right now I'm kind of at a point where I'm just not going to do anything with Lifeweaver. I'm going to let him be in his own little world, and if somebody wants to try running him, that's up to them. But in most circumstances, he's just going to be bad. And that's just going to have to be the world we live in.
I want to hold that thought too about characters being bad, and we will come back to it a little tiny bit later, because I think that's a really, really important design philosophy idea that people are really curious about. Of course, the Blizzard's reaction to bad characters is to just throw them out and rebuild them, or
Buff
to
them instantly.
or to buff them, or to like just roll the dice, close their eyes, throw a dart, and deal with them. But we'll get into that in just a moment. I was asking
to mention
yeah,
quick
go ahead.
about specifically Lifeweaver. It's not just Lifeweaver that's on this, by the way. I literally compiled a blacklist of characters that I told myself we should never make them be good under any circumstances, because if top 500s get their hands on this game mode and immediately find out, wait, this character that doesn't require much input is actually really, really good, that's kind of a disaster scenario for me. I mean, I was really thrilled to see top 500s playing the first time they got their hands on the game mode. Maga and Doom was their meta, even though nobody else in the entirety of people who played it up to that point were actually getting any value on those two characters very much. It's just they know what's good instantly, and they know how to optimize a comp pretty much. And if that ends up being that the most optimal way to play the game is we'll just sit in the back line and pocket your team crazily like with Lifeweaver, I don't want that to be ever the reality. That's boring. That's not a good case to be Overwatch for me.
Can
I'm seeing someone in chat's asking for the list of characters right now.
You laid the breadcrumbs. Let's hear them.
Let's pull up my phone. Hold on.
Here we go.
It's in here somewhere.
Yeah.
In its entirety, we have determined that under any circumstances, Lifeweaver, Symmetra, Sombra, Orisa, Pharah, Kiriko, and Bastion are not allowed to be meta.
I don't know if any of those characters are bad though.
They're not.
That's
terrible.
the problem.
It's the problem is I don't want them to be terrible. I just don't want them to be meta good. Like, they can be okay. They don't have to be good, or they don't have to be bad. They're just not meta. But they can't be the dominant strategy under any circumstances.
I do like the idea of things being situational, and I kind of miss the old Overwatch where there were very situational heroes. And I know we will veer back onto the topic of like development, and then we'll go back into balance. But on that, I am really kind of curious. Are you more of a fan of situational heroes, or are you a fan of heroes that kind of work everywhere, but you prefer to have lower power on the ones that are a little bit toxic?
Situation. How do I that?
Like back in the old days, first point
my
I can
feelings
ball
on
Symmetra.
situational heroes have really changed ever since Overwatch 2 came out.
Okay.
Like, now that ever since Overwatch 1 dropped and it's been steadily worked on for however many years it's been at this point, Blizzard themselves have managed to move a lot of characters away from situational niches. And because 6v6 adjustments is not really trying to be its own game per se, I kind of have to agree with them in that part. I'm not going to try to make Torbjorn married to his turret or something, or whatever bullshit was in the game beforehand. Like, whatever sort of generalization happens to any of the heroes in the game, we're just going to have to roll with the punches on that. I'm okay with it personally. I don't really find heroes that are like built to do like one good thing that interesting, to be honest, because it just means that it's one other thing you have to learn how to play against in all situations that a team could blindside you with some backwards comp that you've never seen before. And then like it only works on that specific map and that specific point, and then like it phases out completely, you need to swap. Like, that's not really that interesting to me.
Can I ask Lemon too, just off on the side? Lemon, do you agree with that list that Toasty said shouldn't be touched, or are there heroes potentially that you think should also be included in that list? And before you answer, I want to give the listeners just a kind of heads up on this. Everybody has their own independent opinions on this. Just because I have an opinion on something, or Lemon has an opinion on balance, or even Toasty, makes a decision, has an opinion on balance, doesn't always mean that it's going to come true.
Yes.
So Lemon might say, he might not like, I don't know, pick a trying to think of a healthy character everyone likes, but there's not really that one nowadays. Ana, he's like, I don't like Ana, doesn't mean we're going to be nerfing Ana. So, like, what do you think, Lemon? What are some heroes potentially? Do you agree with that list, or do you think there's more that should be on it, or less?
I mean, I would say probably less. I'm not really gonna go on like every single character directly, because I don't know.
What's the one that stands out? You say less. If you were to fight Toasty behind the school, for lunch money, what would he be over?
For what?
Are you what?
No, I'm saying like, if you were to really stand up to Toasty and go, I'm gonna take over this. This is my balance patch. What would you do? Or like, how would you push back on his list? That's what my curiosity is.
I guess like, I just think that characters that are less they're less skillful can be changed in ways to make the less, like, every character has like something, it takes some level of like brain to use. I just think that maybe reworking them to focus on the skillful aspects would be better.
So you're a fan of...
I know that reworks aren't really in the question. It's like, for example, Lifeweaver. I honestly think outside of Life Grip, he's not really a particularly offensive hero.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if I could do something with Grip, then he'd be a much healthier character.
Okay. So what you're saying, to summarize, is that you would disagree with Toasty if there was the potential to do reworks on a lot of these heroes.
Yes.
But without that, it seems like you're pretty okay with the general list right now.
I would say I'd be less strict on that, but I don't really have a specific hero I'd really mention for that I'd want off that list, because honestly, I don't feel like any of those characters are really like specifically under power to other characters in the first place.
Okay.
It's like, if Toasty thinks they're weak, I don't really care.
No, see, it doesn't have anything to do with them being weak. They just can't be the dominant strategy. That's all I'm looking out for. They can be strong. It's okay. People enjoy playing all those heroes, for instance, so why should I make them bad?
But not the go-to, like, every single fight. Yeah, if we see...
They can't be... It's just strictly not fun. If they have to be in play every single game, that's not fun for anybody.
If we see Symmetra every game, then we know something's gone real wrong, right? Like, go. Okay. It makes perfect sense. Moving on with that kind of idea in mind, what heroes in particular right now are under your microscope? What are the heroes to you that potentially either you're working on? I don't want to like direct you to spoil anything right away, but what heroes do you like stand out in the current balance of 7H SKW?
Let's let me go first. I want to see what you're up to.
Sure.
Well, I'm not balanced, and I wasn't really looking at it. I feel pretty good.
You're still entitled to make suggestions. And
you got opinions.
on your own.
I mean, I know I pushed this earlier, dude. It's like the Alari thing. I think it was when you weren't really listening. Like,
if it was in a voice call,
I made a couple of suggestions, and I think you just forgot them. But anyway, I guess one I kind of pushed earlier is that like a way to change Bastion. Like, pretty much, like, give him back his speed, but lower his, like, survivability. Like, completely remove the passive, and maybe do something to, like, lower the armor to health ratio. Very slightly.
Squishier Bastion?
No.
I just think more like Glass Cannon Bastion.
Before we get too deep into suggestions, do you think right now Bastion is worth this level of effort to look at, Lemon? So, like, that's where I really want to focus on. What do you think right now needs the big change? Because I do agree, Bastion obviously can shift power around a little bit, but do you think he's that important right now in the meta of our 6v6 that he needs to be directly addressed?
I mean, I would say low priority, but also I don't really know what would be more important, because like it's like we just had the patch yesterday and everything feels pretty good.
It feels really good. Okay.
I mean, one thing I will highlight is like Orisa, for example. Like the changes to Orisa made her feel a lot better.
Okay, I don't want to toot my own horn real quick, but that Havana game was so fun. I don't care about that lost. I just had a lot of fun. I
thought Orisa wasn't fun, Toasty.
No, she's great whenever you're actually in a composition that makes sense around her, on a map that makes sense to be playing her on.
Yeah, like Queen of Route 66.
Just to give listeners context, the other day we did try a new patch and we did a bunch of testing on it, and so they're referencing back to that like testing phase where we're playing around with different heroes. Right now, in general, and again, we're still going to focus on what Toasty what heroes Toasty thinks need to be balanced on. But right now, the game actually feels pretty damn good. Like it is very, very tight. If you guys more errors. Computer, stop giving me errors. All right, we will. Any listeners are like, oh, geez, my USB stuff's been plugged.
I can take over the conversation.
Yes, please do.
Answer the question.
Please do.
What heroes am I currently looking at for future changes?
Yeah.
I'm still on the point where I'm not happy with Bastion. I think Lemon's got a good point. There's probably something better we can do with him, and I don't know if glass cannon bastions where I want to end up.
I don't like it. I'm not asking for a major change. I just think like giving him the speed back so we can play around like tanks that aren't that move around as well.
Right.
Would be better, but also like I honestly think the passive should probably be removed.
We don't need to like discuss immediate changes on what's wrong or what needs to happen with him. It's just that
think, like,
I want to just make it clear that I want to change him somehow in the future. We don't know exactly what the timeline on this is, but he's on my radar.
All right.
And there's a couple others that are definitely on my radar for sure. Like I think might have like accidentally completely gutted Brigida.
Oh no, that's so terrible.
I don't think that hero gets any value on anything, to be honest with you.
Actually, I've never seen that hero in any of our 6v6 games.
I've seen every single time I've seen a Brigida, it gets like shit on every fucking team fight, and then somebody immediately swaps because like I don't really want to play this. This feels bad, so they swap. So I don't really know what happened there. Like Brigida was massively strong for a long time in this code, and then I guess we got Inspire, and the entire character falls over. So
maybe not anything but Inspire, please.
I think you have to gut Inspire, though. That's the one thing that everybody knew was like the most broken thing about the character.
I meant like if you want to give her more power, don't.
We're not going back on Inspire. That is staying almost unusable. That has to stay almost unusable. I don't care what else we change to make it feel better, but it's not going to be Inspire. What's
your guess as to why she's been gutted, right? Like obviously the change, like we did see her for a little bit and you didn't really change her that much. Why do you like just what's your initial guess as to why you think she's kind of not useful at the moment in 6v6?
The last time Brigida was officially played in 6v6 was obviously in Overwatch 1, and that has such a different landscape as to what it is now. It's kind of unreal to even think about.
Mm-hmm.
For one, you don't have a stun on your shield bash. Everybody has bigger projectiles except you, so you're taking more damage.
Mm-hmm.
Your armor is the exact same, so that's a wash. It used to be different, but still. Rally doesn't actually give armor. It gives overhealth now. Rally doesn't actually heal you at all over time. It's just going to be the instant 300 armor or 100 armor on top of your health. Like if you think about it, it's really just been like situational nerf over the course of the entire game up until this point. So I guess just kind of got developed out of existence. Just micro change here and micro change there. The ult rework there, of course, being a big problem. And like you just don't survive and you don't get enough value. Your healing sucks, and there's like better options for anything. Like for example, if you want to run anti-dive, you don't get on Brig. You probably just would rather be on Zen or something and kill whatever's trying to dive.
Exactly.
Like, there's just better options now.
What changes, and you don't have to give us the whole thing, but what changes would you like to try to bring her back into something that is usable?
A few months ago, Overwatch 2 decided to reduce the cooldown on Repair Pack, but I instantly reverted that, and I might have thought to quickly on that one. Maybe a cooldown reduction on Repair Pack is the right solution. That's the most unique thing about Brigida's healing, because you can like throw it through barriers, for example. Not a lot of other support utility can do that. So maybe we should lean into that aspect of Brigida. I don't know. There's anything on the table at this point except for Inspire.
Okay. Fox, I do see your questions in chat. I have a general idea about the format that I want to get to. We're going to be going more about the roles a little bit later in this. This is why we're kind of like pinpointing individual heroes right now that these guys think is important, just for context. Fox is kind of asking about the support role and the heroes in the support role. But we will, like I say, we will talk about roles a little bit later. I got some pretty good topics. I think that these guys will have some big opinions around, in terms of just roles in general. Any other heroes before we move on to the next next concept here that stand out to you, that either they're too strong or too weak, that you would like to address a little bit?
Ooh. No. No, those games last night were awesome. I played like anything I wanted to and had a great time.
So we'll immediately jump into, what do you think are the most balanced heroes right now in the 6v6 game mode? What are the
most balanced heroes? Ones that I'm not keen on touching for any reason, I guess, would be the probably best way to translate that.
Exactly. Yeah. If out of all the heroes, if people were suggesting changes, these are the ones that you would defend the most from changing. You would not touch them.
Let's see. I'm thinking right now. and I think only one character comes to mind for sure. Like, it's definitely got to be Anna. That
Anna
deserves zero changes. Everything about her breakpoints, her healing amounts, her damage amounts, her cooldown rotation, ult build rate, all the interactions that she has with the rest of the game, it's like perfect. Like, you should never touch Anna in the way that she behaves in Overwatch right now. That's perfect. And if need be, you should also design everything to fit in a world where Ana is the standard for these breakpoints, because it just makes a lot of sense to be able to. Hold on, what was I about to say there? I don't want to go on a tangent, but I really dislike the fact that the season 9 health pool increases ruined Ana's like 2-shot nade kill combo that she's got going on.
breakpoints, yeah, disappeared.
That breakpoint is very important to the game feel of Ana, and I want that to stay intact no matter what. And that is where I want to like balance characters around. If, for example, Cassidy does like the exact same damage to Ana, but it makes sense that he can do it faster because he's an actual damage hero. So anything that would be relative to this breakpoint should be compared to how Ana's damage feels, and by extension, how Cassidy's damage feels. Like that's like the two characters I think you should be looking towards on like the rate at which a character can deal damage within a range on their specific role. There's nothing wrong with them. They're perfect where they are.
Okay. Lemon, do you agree? Is that something you think is pretty solid, or are there other heroes that you think probably should be the pinnacle of balance right now, or considered the pinnacle of balance?
I mean, I don't know if I really have a pinnacle in mind, but what Toastie said is pretty decent.
Ana, yeah,
it makes sense. I don't really have the counterpoint, and I don't have another idea either.
I do hear, and I want to bring this up anyways, it was in the back of my head, Sojourn right now obviously is one of those ones, and I see the comments in chat there. I just want to bring that up because it is one of those heroes that in the right hands stands out quite a bit. Now, to keep this somewhat relevant to what we're talking about, my opinion on this, and I'm curious where Toasties and Lemons is that a lot of the times when a hero stands out, it's mostly because they're really good players that are playing that hero. Like Sojourn right now, for example, is exceptionally strong, but we don't see actual Sojourn dominate games unless there's like a Sojourn player in the lobby. What do you guys think? Also, too, in general, just the concept, I want to hear you guys talk around this subject. Do you think certain heroes are too strong because they're balanced too strong, or some stuff just stands out because, again, players are very good, and maybe we could just say skill issue?
I do like saying skill issue.
Skill issue is a good phrase, but
fun,
actually,
yeah.
I can't agree with saying it in terms of Sojourn. There's one thing that I'm kind of scared about when it comes to the most recent like changes Sojourn got in season 11 is that like now your rail will pierce everybody always.
Okay.
And that can get out of hand pretty fast, and I don't really know what we can do about it, to be honest with you, because obviously you can't revert that. Workshop's not that powerful. But you can't just gut the damage on it, because then you'll never kill anything in a 1v1. So what's the solution here, right? I honestly have not looked into Sojourn at all post rework. I was just kind of hoping like, oh, cool, they rework Sojourn. Why don't we just let people play Sojourn in 66 for a while before we make any concrete thoughts on this? Because it was literally like, what, yesterday? 2 days ago?
Yeah, it's very...
Yeah, actually yesterday. So let it sit for a minute. Let people figure it out. I don't know how useful or how, broken Sojourn might be in this context, but we'll have to see. I think it's a little better, because now that like rail itself is only like 150 damage to the head, for example, that's probably a good thing.
Okay.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Just to add, sorry, 1 second, let me just interrupt, guys. For chat, for people asking questions, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do a little question period towards the end. We'll see how much these guys have to talk and how much information they want to give us about the actual balance of the game, and then I'm gonna go into like specific questions for you guys, for them to answer from you guys. I think that's probably the best way of doing it, as opposed to making it all over the place in terms of what the topic is and what we're talking about. So we're playing this by ear by now, but that's the kind of goal with that. And on that topic too, with Sojourn kind of in mind, what heroes do you think are like dominating just because the players are really good?
What heroes are dominating because people are good? Well, I mean, obviously Widowmaker's always going to be in that tier, no matter what character. So,
and do you think that's a problem to have heroes that like have insane amounts of value when a player is just that much better than everybody else? Or do you think they should have some kind of like, I don't know, some training weights or something on them in a way to stop them from dominating lobbies.
Wish there was more I could do with this. I don't know. To be honest, I've never been in a situation where a Widowmaker is just completely taken over the game. I've never been in a lobby like that. There's always something that I feel like I could do as a player to get around it, but I always hear so many high ranked players bitch about it. So I don't know. Maybe I will have to do something about Widowmaker eventually. Who knows? But also, like, I wouldn't mind completely goading Widow so that she's like okay at top level and a complete throw at low level. That makes somewhat sense to me. But that's kind of where Sojourn's at right now. Let's be honest.
Then go ahead, Lemon. Yeah, definitely speak up.
I guess on Widowmaker, I'm not convinced Widow's that good right now with the two tanks. Like
maybe
like
that's a tank issue. Maybe
it's a tank issue. It's like the Reaper allegations.
The Reaper allegations. Whatever.
Yeah,
I remember those.
Because there does seem to be, and again, this comes from a lot of the high elo players. They'll come out of a game and they'll be like, I absolutely hate Widow. But I do notice that, you know, they are in a game with gold tanks, right? Or like there's usually something that makes it very hard for us to actually assess like whether or not these characters are really good. I see a mention of one-shots in chat there. That's a really big thing. I think we'll abstract out from these heroes a little bit and ask about your opinions on one-shots. I'm actually want to start with Lemon first. Lemon, what are your opinions? Should the game have one-shots? Should it not have one-shots? Where do you think the game should stand?
Okay. I guess like when it comes to live, since like it's a lot harder to counter it, maybe less so, but in the context of a 6v6 environment, they should definitely exist as like a skill check to tank players doing their job.
Okay. As a skill check specifically. Like, so if the tank players are executing properly, that's what mitigates the one-shots, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's also in the hands of the actual player playing around the tanks or just cover.
Okay. So you are pro one-shot. Are there types of one-shots that you think are good or bad? Obviously, clicking on heads, if you're okay with one-shots, is not a bad thing. You're okay with someone clicking on a head and killing someone right away. But, you know, we could talk about stuff like Doomfist Punch, right? Or are there other things that you think are that should never ever become one-shots?
I guess I can't really think of anything that's currently in the game that's a one-shot that's I find particularly problematic. I know a lot of people hate, like, I guess Hog, for example.
Yeah.
But I kind of disagree with that.
You're a Hog player.
Because, like, I'm not a Hog player. Okay.
That was a very aggressive defense. Okay, I get it. You're not a Hog player. That's fine. I'm okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But nothing in particular that stands out to you. How about you, Toasty? What do you think in terms of one-shots? Good, bad, any toxic one-shots you think that should be removed?
Evil.
Necessary evil.
Sorry.
Elaborate.
If you don't like one-shots, that's just not my problem. There's too many people in a lobby that one-shots not existing would just cause the game to drag way too hard. Like, sometimes, if you play a stupid position, you need to explode. And whether that be one Widowmaker holding down that sight line, or a collective of focus fire that happens instantaneously, sometimes you just have to explode for playing bad. I'm sorry. There's just no other way around it. Like, if you're not respecting a Roadhog space who's clearly ready to hook you, and you're just kind of standing in the open, he's going to hook you and kill you. That's just it. Sorry. I don't know how else to phrase it, right?
Fully agree.
I mean, there's some ones that I feel like you could make an argument that they're a little too rough. Like, you can't know what angle Widow's covering as soon as you start a team fight, so it can be kind of corny. Sometimes Hanzo will lob a log down main and it will instantly kill somebody. It's like, okay, sure. Sometimes shit happens. But there are still other things you can do to mitigate this sort of situation. Like, you can, if you have to, mirror the character. You could swap heroes to something else, like, that counters it. You could stack with your tanks better. Like, there are things you can do, okay? Like, it's not the be-all, end-all. Everybody just needs to play a one-shot hero, otherwise we lose the game. Like, that's just never going to be the case. There's better ways to get value. And the only careful thing I need to be, like, mindful of when balancing heroes that have one-shots is, like, that needs to be the one thing that they're really good at, and they're be okay at best at things other than that. This is the main reason why Hanzo has 4 Storm Arrows on this patch, because he was way too good at one-shotting it and deleting tanks, which was not okay, in my opinion.
So you're saying that, like, one-shots are good, but there has to be a level of downtime, right? The character can't have power outside of that. like obviously we'll bring up Roadhog as an example, and I obviously know your response on this, but how would you take a thing like Roadhog? And I'm gonna even argue Roadhog, it's not a one shot because you're doing a combo, and I think some people in chat are saying the same thing. How would you consider if you were to take Roadhog and just put it up as like, this is like a balance, I don't know, we're brainstorming balance. Where would you weight that level of one shot versus vulnerability?
Perfectly fine where it is right now. 20-meter range, you have to follow up with some other damage that's not just the hook instantly killing you. Either it be Pigpen or a leaded shot from some distance. It's a cooldown cycle, like it's perfect. Like you can outplay it. You can also throw a cooldown at the hooked player to save them. Like there's so many things you can do to stop it from happening that it should never be the source of frustration primarily in a game. I know it sucks to get hooked out of position sometimes, like especially as tank when you need to be somewhere, but that's how Roadhog makes space. So what are you complaining about?
That is just the hero, right? Like it's what you got to get used to. At the end, skill issue, right? That's kind of we're.
That is a very long-winded way of just claiming skill issue.
It really is. It really is. Oh, that's an excellent perspective. So I'll summarize that kind of in a quick way because I know it's a big controversial thing. Our developers, at least for the 6v6 game mode, they're okay with one shots. It's actually a fine thing. Personally, I like one shots. I prefer even more one shots in a game. I think part of the fun of a game is not being one shot, right? Obviously, it's not fun to be one shot. So when you avoid that and you're like, wow, I survived, like that's part of the really cool gaming experience that you go, okay, I'm a better player than whatever X, Y, and Z.
Right. There's like even we can take it even a step further. There's like one shots, air quotes, that are in this code right now that you wouldn't typically like associate with being one shots, but they're like combinations of abilities you can do really fast to just burst someone down, like landing 3 shurikens to somebody in someone's face as Genji and then instantly finishing with like swift strike or melee. You can't do that in 5v5, but you can do it here and it feels great to land it. I love the just how snappy it feels, just the reward of instantly finding that value and instantly capitalizing on it. It just feels great to have to do it. Maybe a bit of a guilty pleasure, but it feels good. I like including them. Venter's got one, Symmetra's got one against Tracer specifically, like so does Cass in that context. Like obviously Reinhardt could pin you and just instantly kill you. There's a lot of ways to just kill people in this game, and I think it really helps keep the game moving. Like the threat of it, the time to kill being much quicker. It's just the flow is much nicer. I don't like how stagnant 5v5 can feel because everyone's just got so many bailouts or so much health or so many ways to deny value. So one shots are kind of like a consequence of the time to kill being lower and the game moving faster.
So it's exceptionally clear that you are against the larger health pools, right? Oh, wow.
Worst change Overwatch has ever made in the history of the game. Worse than moving to 5v5 in my opinion. I hate those health pool increases.
Why? Give us the rant. I want to hear your opinion, and why specifically when you went to make 6v6 that you reduced health pools right down when that patch came out. Why is that so important to you as a developer?
Okay, I guess we're gonna rant because that's what you want.
Do it.
So
Go for it.
Let's start with the point number one. The reason why they did it in the first place didn't really make much sense to begin with. They, in the developer comments, when they decided to patch Season 9, they cited the increased health pools as a consequence of them needing to do that because they increased the projectile sizes. And they increased the projectile sizes because they were not satisfied with the overall accuracy stats across Overwatch because everyone's got crazy movement acceleration. Like, that was all one big chain of events that they cited as, well, that's how we ended up here. So everyone just has to have more health, I guess. But when they made that change, they tried to accommodate some specific heroes to make the transition easier, but a lot of them got left behind. I've already mentioned Ana and the breakpoint that you have of using 2 shots in your nade to kill somebody. Not only that, but like Cassidy has to land 2 headshots to do that.
How's it going, Sheer?
Like, Ashe didn't get any damage updates, neither did Sojourn, neither did like 90% of the heroes. Junker Queen was fucking unplayable when that season hit, dude. That was like when the damage passive came out, if I remember correctly, and you had no damage ups, so you were fighting into every hero that had more health with no damage changes yourself, and also your self-healing is getting cut because the new damage passive. Like, it was the most shoehorned, ridiculously executed fix of something that they broke alternatively. It was the worst change I've ever experienced at Overwatch. And it was that patch that really made me like put my nose down and start working on this code because I hated the way it felt. I desperately wanted to play something else besides it.
I will add to this too, and this is from my Scraps experiments. I think the size of the characters changes were completely unnecessary. We've reduced the characters by the size they increase the projectiles, and the game feels great when it's fast and you're accurate, and things are like when you aim at something and you click on it, it matters. And if you miss, you're absolutely screwed. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna hurt your soul a little bit here. Can you steel man the argument as to why the hitbox and health changes needed to happen? And I know you're going to be against, we know your position, but why in the world do you think Blizzard would make that type of decision?
Oh, I know why. I mean, it's very obvious. I listed their reasoning already in the patch notes, but also just because people don't like missing shots. Like, that's not really that fun. And Overwatch is the only shooter on the market right now that I know of that has like low movement acceleration, so you're zipping back and forth really quickly when you strafe. Like every other shooter, you can look at any other shooter in the entire industry, whether it be Apex, Fortnite, Halo does this, Valorant does this. Every other game, your movement is way slower or more predictable. Overwatch is not that. You move very quickly. And so in order to, I guess, appeal to more players more broadly, they wanted to allow people to actually land their shots because the alternative is missing, and no one likes that. No one likes getting shit on because the tracer is blinking a million miles a second and she's behind you all of a sudden and she's tiny and you can never land a shot on her. Like, that's just not that fun for a new player ever. So that's their compromise. We have to make the projectiles bigger because that's fun for people who don't know any better.
Especially too, and this is more stuff I've looked into on the outside too. A lot of it has to do with, of course, like performance. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you're running the game at 30 FPS, so let's say you're playing on console and your game starts to dip in terms of frame rate, 30 FPS of character moving across your screen can literally be like multiple heads in between frames. Like, it'll show a frame, they'll move, and then because the frame rate is so low, they're like there's a huge gap in between that first frame and that second frame. I feel like a lot of those hitbox changes, they were like, yeah, well, people are missing shots, but also performance is crap across the board, and we have it on the Nintendo Switch now, and let's just make people hit more. It's like a very, I don't know.
That's kind of like a halfway way to interpret it, because those consoles that run it at that low also have pretty generous aim assist as well.
Yeah, there's parts of that too. That's just my kind of feel on top of that. Lemon, I'm going to turn to you right now and ask you, what has your opinions been on the hitboxes and health changes?
I mean, they're not fun. I don't know. Like, I guess like the biggest clear example that I've gotten is whenever you start like a box game mode. Like, cause like you're in a deathmatch environment, you want to kill people. And, like, the amount of times where, like, I try to kill someone and then I die when they're at, like, less than 50 health. I know for a fact I would have killed them on the actual patch that we're on.
The real patch.
Constant reminders of all the breakpoints they removed is very frustrating.
So, for context,
I can take that even like one step further.
Hold that thought. Let me just give context to listeners quickly. When he references the box, he's talking about our Sunday Scrub Club Scraps. You guys are welcome to join almost every single Sunday, where we play a variety of different game modes, and we're saying like the box. It's particularly where we do default hero setups, right? Every hero has the kind of 250 health that they have right there, and then from there we swap into like the 7H SKW 200 health balance. The feeling is very clear. You notice it. There's like the game feels significantly worse if you go, once you go into the larger hitboxes, or if you go from large hitboxes to the, what's that, hiccup? Sorry. I'm dying. Changing hitbox sizes. And if I was to like not close my eyes, you can't close your eyes and play the video game. But if I was to like A/B test it, I would 99% of the time say the smaller hitbox changes and the smaller health pools. Well, actually, not even the hitbox changes. Just the health pools, as in terms of what we changed, feel way better. So that's what he's saying when he references the box, and that's where that comparison is coming from. Toasty, sorry, I interrupted you there.
I just wanted to add on to the feeling that Lemon was describing, where you can, like you said, you can feel those HP pools just being bloated, and also that like when you get somebody low and you know that you would have killed them in a situation where they didn't have that, is even worse when you're in a situation like some of our players, including myself, where you have the accuracy to land the shots regardless of the bigger projectiles, and you're landing the same exact damage that you would have in the same time span that you would have otherwise, despite the fact that like the projectiles are bigger. You're not missing, right? You're just landing the same shots, but you're killing things slower. Like if you're at the point where like your accuracy is not getting affected by these projectile sizes, which is definitely the case for some Overwatch players, then it's literally just the time to kill got slower. That's it. That's the only change that made.
No, that with me was brutal. As a Tracer lover, like that I can one clip someone. The concept of walking up to somebody and one clipping them is like the standard base play of Tracer, but I'm not missing shots when I do that. Well, actually, I am missing shots, but I do it properly, right? I get punished for having to now shoot more bullets into their head, which takes a lot longer in comparison to the old like, and then they're dead. That's it. You kind of like, you get rewards for that right away for going in. Even though it's just like, it's a fraction of a second difference, you feel it and it feels absolutely terrible. I have had people mentioned at the very start that they're like, oh, this does feel a little bit better. But I think that's just, they're like applying the old skill set to the new easy way of doing things. Like if you struggled at doing something for a long time and then something changes and now it's easy, it might feel like it's better to do, but you lose a whole bunch of that skill, or like, I don't know, the personal respect that it comes from executing something that is hard to do. I will ask you quickly too, with the health pools, and we'll kind of keep on that topic right now. We've reduced the health pools of the tanks quite a bit, almost back to what they were in Overwatch 1, but even in some cases quite a bit more. What are your thoughts behind that, Toasty? Like, why have we done that? Why have we taken those steps?
Why are the tank health pools back to Overwatch 1 values? What was the question?
And potentially a little lower. They're a little bit lower in some cases. Am I correct? Am I wrong about that? From my memory, it's, yeah.
I don't think any tank heroes is explicitly lower than they were in Overwatch 1.
Direct. Okay.
Maybe some cases like D.Va, but well, I mean, the answer's obvious. Like, you just don't need all that health. It's kind of ridiculous to expect that you would. Yeah, I mean, like we were just going over how fun it is to actually kill things when you shoot at them. Why would the tank heroes be an exception to that? They already have plenty of mitigation tools or mobility to avoid damage that they should be. They don't also need ludicrously large health pools on top of that.
Lemon, were you going to say something there too?
No.
No, I fully agree. Toasty just sometimes said it's hard to disagree with Toasty sometimes. Oh, actually, no, wait. Sometimes it's easy, but when it comes to balance and stuff like that, it's true. Like, yeah. Anyways, I've got no more to add to that. You have to reduce the health pools of the tanks. You have to maintain some kind of fun gameplay cycle against the tanks, and part of that is making them killable. Now, question with that. Now that we're relatively comfortable with the levels of health that are in the game, Toasty, would you consider going up or down in terms of health pools, or are you completely satisfied with this?
I actually like the way the health pools are right now. I don't think they need to be changed to any sort of drastic measures. The only thing that I would consider is potentially slightly less armor on a few of them and swap it for base health instead.
Okay.
That's where we're at. We're at a point where it feels really good. Everyone has a solid breakpoint for every single one of the tank heroes. Like, Reinhardt's durable, Sigma's punishable, Ball doesn't live 20 million years. I mean, it's like all the pain points you might have with tank health pools have been addressed. They do their job, but they don't overstay their welcome. It's right where it should be. So,
where does the tank passive, the headshot stuff, fit into all this then? Is this something that you've had to like readjust your thoughts in terms of how you balance the tanks at all? Or do you think in general it's relatively ineffective at doing what it's supposed to
do? I guess our experimental game mode here, like, 7HSKW, kind of did show just how much of a bad solution to the tank experience that was when it was implemented in Season 10.
Okay.
I mean, it makes a huge difference when you're playing 5v5 and you're shooting an 800 HP Giga tank that's just not dying, and like even though he's getting thunder cunted with a bunch of headshots all at once, he's just not dying anyway. It's like, okay, that makes a huge difference, but that's not the point. In our situation, where you don't have nearly as much HP to work with, I kind of overestimated how much of a difference that passive was going to make when it came out. We did, like, at some point, have the health pools tuned down across the board for all tank heroes slightly in accordance with that passive coming out.
Yep.
And, like, that did not last very long because it didn't feel good at all. Like, people were dying way too fast on tank. Even some of our best tank players were like, this is not good. I don't know why, but I can't stay alive. It's just, like, even if it's, strictly speaking, you're taking less damage, well, there's also a lot of sources in the game of damages that actually don't do headshots. And there's also a lot of situations where headshots were not the reason why you were dying to begin with. It's...
Yeah, it'd be hitbox size, splash
like,
damage, all that kind of stuff.
Essentially, like, we're at the point where even though we've got 2 tanks on 6v6 with their own individual cooldown cycles and health pools and whatnot, I don't even think anyone feels like that headshot passive is still in the game. It genuinely doesn't even cross people's mind. Like, they still die just fine. It doesn't extend their life by any significant margin. I mean, we're talking about maybe it mitigates up to 100 damage a team fight. It's really insignificant.
It's very trivial. Hey, welcome in Spinbot, by the way. How you doing, dude? We're doing a little podcast on 6v6 right now. With that, I want to... Well, actually, let me step back just for a second. I have noticed that on Tracer, playing Tracer, back before the headshot passive, I would just pump damage into the tank's heads just to get ult charge. Now, it, like, destroys my ability to do that. There's, like, no reason at all for me to just be... Or just... There's no reason at all for me to try to drag that extra ult charge out, because I'm not getting the charge from it. I'm not being very impactful in the fight. I'm not pushing anything. The tanks aren't changing their playstyle at all. They're just standing there and going, yep, you're shooting me in the head. I don't really give a crap. Keep doing that, Tracer. I'm going to keep living through it. So in some ways, I think on like the edge cases, it is exceptionally noticeable, but it is also really good that, again, most people don't notice it, as you said, because in most cases, people aren't headshotting, right? Like, or they, like, even just doesn't really matter. The ability itself doesn't really matter. I was actually, one of the chatters mentioned there is the armor rework. Yes, there is. I'll point it out very particularly because what I'll do is I'll wait until we burn the armor, and then that's when you can try and build ult charge. Or when you used to be able to do it, it's just not super viable anymore, or at least doesn't feel as viable as it used to. Along with that, because we are talking on the subject of passives, and like I say, I'm moving along stuff really quick here because I don't want to make this a 4-hour podcast. It'd be fun to do that, but you know, like talk about everything individually. But now that we're talking about passives, the tank passive and the support passive, I could prep you with a lot of questions there, but I'm sure just mentioning that, especially Toasty, there's probably a few words of wisdom coming out right away. What do you think when I say tank passive?
For the purposes of diving into each of these, we should probably talk about the passives individually. So which one do you want to go over first? We already did just go over the tank passive largely. I mean, that was half the passive was the headshot reduction.
Of course.
But
and there's
I guess we can wrap discussion up on that with the knockback changes and then move on to how the other passives feel.
Yeah, the knockback changes also one that, you know, why did we remove them?
You also want to talk about the DPS passive too?
Everything. We're going to go over the one at a time. What's the most important to you right now? And then we'll hit them one at a time.
Well, let's finish up our discussion on tanks, for example.
Sure.
I mean, what's the other part? It's just knockback reduction that they added?
It's knockback reduction, and there's the ult charge reduction in general, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And so that's where I'm pointing out as Tracer, like that plus the headshot, I'm like doing nothing I can't get pulse bomb for crap. But what are your thoughts? Like, again, just the knock. Well, pick one: the knockback or the ult charge change.
I'm at a point where obviously the headshot passive is in the code because we assumed it would be way too taxing on the scripts to actually remove it cleanly, which might still be the case, to be honest. Same reason why the ultimate charge was not in the game, because like you would have to be manually adding ult charge every time you're damaging a tank. So for those two reasons, honestly, we're just kind of out of luck. Blizzard's going to put in passives that we can't reasonably revert, so I guess we're just going to have to live with that.
Now, do you think...
If I could...
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Let's start thinking hypotheticals, because this is what the whole podcast is about.
Mm-hmm.
If I were in full control and able to remove these passives, I honest to God think I would actually like to keep... Excuse me. I would like to keep the headshot reduction passive on tanks. And this is a bit of a hot take for you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the tanks having a more consistent time to kill. Whether it be like they just can't like instantly die to some like double sniper comp just shooting the same one in the head and just like, oh, okay, we lost the team fight. Our tank accidentally peeked the angle they had to contest. That part's not that exciting to me as a tank player. And it doesn't even feel that good to be going up against, like when you're just preventing an enemy tank from playing the game in that way. Because like, what are they even supposed to do? They're just dying instantly. They can't even create space if they're just going to eat all that damage to begin with. Like if we're talking about Orisa, for example, what is she supposed to do if she just instantly gets headshot by like two people and then falls over?
Her job is to take damage to the face, right? Like that's her job, right? It's hard. But then like, so it is interesting to keep that on. But let's just hop over to the boop passive, because you did remove it in the 6v6. So what's the reason? And also too, I defended the Reinhardt keeping his steadfast passive. Right. Why did you think that was a relatively okay one? Or like, again, we're just kind of hitting talking points here. First, we'll talk about the tank passive in general. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I guess a better question would be to phrase this: why do the tanks need knockback reduction? Like, what's the point? The only reason they have it in 5v5 is just because they're getting bullied by the entire rest of the lobby, so they have to be given some sort of throw them a bone, right? How are they going to play?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not a problem you have in 6v6. They either cover through each other's weaknesses, or they would just be completely unstoppable if they're running at the same target and you can't slow them down in any way. Like, they kind of have to not have that passive. Otherwise, you're just looking at tanks that can go anywhere under any circumstances, and no one can contest that. So I don't say why we need to keep the passive, to be honest. Like, it's like, at this point, a better way to phrase it would be like, why would we need to keep it instead? Like, there's more to say like about why it should be gone than there is to say like why we should keep it. So
then why keep it on Reinhardt?
Reinhardt's the only character that you specifically made a point to keep it on there, and I think the only reason we're doing that is just because he kind of loses way too hard to Wrecking Ball.
Yes.
That's the only reason he has that passive. In fact, if we really wanted to get corny with it, I could go back and make it so that Wrecking Ball specifically deals less knockback to Reinhardt.
No, that's good. It's
corny.
It's perfect where it is.
New steadfast passive. Wrecking Ball can't fight him.
And I'll point this out for listeners too. It's because we have some very dedicated Wrecking Ball players in our Discord, and so sometimes when they're on, it's a Wrecking Ball all day, every day. And I remember very, very, very clearly when they first introduced the passive to Reinhardt, and Reinhardt was the only one that got the passive, the devs specifically mentioned Wrecking Ball as one of those characters where if you're on like Lijiang Tower, it's gardens with the bridges on either side. With a good Wrecking Ball, Reinhardt literally cannot do anything. Every other hero has some kind of like ability to, every other tank has something to kind of mitigate that. But he gets into trouble in those areas. Sorry, Toastie, you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I think we should move on. Tank passive. Like, discussing the tank passive seems more obvious because that was the one that like we know how two tanks should work in 6v6. We've seen it before for 4 years or something prior to this.
Yeah.
But we should probably make a more interesting discussion about what the other passives and why they're not here anymore. Especially the global HP regen passive, which I want to talk about for a little bit.
Hit us.
Let's wrap around, get the whole thing sorted, go from one role to the other, starting from tank, move down to damage.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the damage passive is not in the game is because I don't agree with it ever being necessary.
Okay. Why?
The only reason that damage passive is in the game is because Blizzard doesn't have the balls to nerf supports. That's simple.
Yep.
Nerf supports, the damage passive is no longer necessary. So guess what? We nerf supports. You don't need the damage passive. Done. I don't have anything else to say, actually. That's pretty all-encompassing.
I'm curious, has there been any instances where you were like, maybe the damage passive is worth it in some situations. Are there some combos and stuff that stand out to you, or are you 100% no? You are just no.
I'm not 100% no. I'm 120% no.
Okay.
There's zero reason for that to ever be in the game. As a support hero, it doesn't feel very good to have to be fighting against or be having to heal a tank that is just trying to stay alive and they're constantly yielding space, but you can't get them back up to it. You can't stabilize them because they just won't receive much healing. That's not fun. It's not very fun to be playing as tank and trying to fight something that has a ludicrous amount of healing, but you can't pierce through it because your damage aren't on that angle. That's not fun either. Just the simple fact that the game is being balanced around the damage passive means that the rest of the roles lose so much impact where they genuinely shouldn't.
And I think too, I'll bring this up as like, this is kind of more my point, but I think you agreed with me on this. I think bad game design is when you do 20% reduced healing on a Thursday when you're playing on King's Row at night and the enemy has a Sigma and they combo. Like, there's all these weird abstract rules that just make the game ridiculously complicated for literally no reason. And like, there's a functionality that comes with like, what's the purpose? Again, why would we need it in the first place? But then there's also arguments like we just don't need it because it's just so unnecessarily complicated. Why do you need to pay attention? Why do you even need to take your eyes off the enemy and look at a small icon? And you can't even see it. Actually, I think you mentioned this too before. The supports can't even see the damage passive. Right?
You have, as a support player, actually healing people, you don't have any idea who's affected by that passive.
No idea. And like, it's the attacker that knows whether the damage, but it's stupid because the actually it's the person receiving it and the attacker, right? But like, how the attacker already knows when he's doing damage, and that's kind of the assumption, like he's gonna know when he's got the passive off. But the person receiving it, they have to stand back and wait, and then that doesn't, like, they have to like tell their other supports, be like, hey guys, I've got the damage passive, I can't and it's just it's I think it's really bad gameplay overall. I think the more Overwatch gets into the abstract, the worse it gets.
Are we all in agreement, the three of us? Maybe we also should let Lemon speak on this. Are we all in agreement that this passive sucks? Or
yes. True.
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely
so
true.
we'll
No, I want to give 1 sec. I want to get Lemon. Do you have anything particular that you want to add? And again, there's stuff that we can all agree on. That's fine. But again, people listening, and I think it's really important for us to articulate that. So, Lemon, is there anything you want to add to why you think the passive is crap?
I don't really have anything to add. I mean.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right, we can move on.
Dead horse. Like if we know why the passive sucks. We don't need to beat a dead horse about it. We just move on, right?
Yeah, move on. Done.
Support passive.
Support passive.
And you know what? Actually, in the interests of expediting the whole conversation, I think we should lump in the support passive with the global passive, the region passive.
I would consider them generally the same thing, and then obviously the support passive is like an increase of the one. So why do you think self-healing is bad for the game?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
Don't put words in my mouth.
All right. I'll let you.
But no. Okay. We'll go ahead and make this simple. Who here is in agreement that global self-healing passive should be in the game, especially in 66?
No, I hate it.
Nuh-uh.
Get it out.
No. Okay, so we're all in agreement on this one again.
Yep.
Man.
You should still explain, because like there are.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna move on. I'm gonna explain why I think I feel this way. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page before I try to contradict anybody.
Absolutely.
I don't like the self-healing passive because it just by it existing kind of nullifies anybody's ability to deal poke damage. Mm-hmm. If you take needless spam from some angle that you're trying to contest and you don't have an immediate way to heal it back, whether there's no huff kits present or you're not near a support, then that itself means that whoever dealt the poke to you has inflicted some way to slow you down, to make space and prevent you from contesting more angles too quickly. If you don't have a source of healing, you have to go get one. Otherwise, you can't stay on that angle. Mm-hmm. And that's good for the game. If everybody is allowed to occupy any angle they want, whenever they want, then you're kind of just looking at chaos. And there's it drastically harms the amount of strategy to map control that the game would have otherwise.
That to me, I want to highlight, is a really important gameplay cycle. So if there's a Widowmaker off in the distance, which Widowmaker is obviously a controversial character, if I splash damage her so she's now half health in some way, I get a little bit of damage on, with self-healing, she stands still and then gets the healing back and then can kind of hold that angle. What Toastie's talking about is when I get a little slash damage and there's no self-healing, right? She either has to find a support or she's got to find a health pack. And in the case that she finds the support, it also puts more pressure on the support to react and set up for those in-between moments, right? If a support can just ignore splash damage and just stand there, it makes a very like one-dimensional style of play. You're just like heal botting in a way, as opposed to back in the old days of Overwatch, and this is the nowadays the game that we're playing, you actually have to like plan. You have resources. You go into battle. If you screw those resources in any way, you screw yourself and you screw your team. There's no like free outs. There's nothing that allows you just go, oops, I made a tiny mistake. You know, if you get hit, if you take 10 damage, you're at 190 health on any character, you're at 190 health. Like, you have to go do something about it. But when you're dealing with any type of self-healing, especially too with the extra support self-healing, the supports can just chill out literally in the team, allow the splash damage to kind of do its thing, and then focus on like one or two major issues. There is an argument that says that, okay, it maybe allows supports to be more aggressive, but I don't think so either. I don't know if you want to, I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more on that, but do you agree with that it would make that the self-healing passive makes it so supports can be more aggressive? Because I think it's the opposite.
Easily. No, it's easily. The supports can do whatever they want whenever they have the ability to just retain their health pool just by standing behind their tank, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it actually does kind of correspond to how the damage passive interacts with the game as well, if you think about it. Say, for example, like, we live in a world where back in Season 7 of Overwatch 2, where the damage passive hasn't yet hit the game, and supports are still, like, dominating the rank ladder. Like, Alari poke comps is, like, massively strong. The reason why that took off so outrageously is because supports that don't have to pay any mind to staying alive from poke damage means that they can't get forced out by anything other than something that directly threatens their life.
Yeah.
So they have more resources and more attention to be pouring that into the rest of their team. Their damage, maybe even their tank, and they're just able to keep whatever they want alive from through thick and thin. Doesn't matter. So when you remove that support passive, all of a sudden, anytime a stray projectile hits a support, that has to be healed by either that support using their own cooldown to heal themselves, or their other support putting attention onto them directly, which will then, by proxy, relieve some of the pressure and relieve some of the attention that the rest of their team is getting, and then makes them either die or yield. It's all connected to that support passive. If they have to make a conscious effort to regain their health, then doing any amount of damage means that you actually are working down a team in a team fight. Poke matters more, and it makes... hold on, you were still going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to hold on that too. And this is where I think we need to do a little more kind of experimenting, because I'm of two mindsets, and this is where I feel when I'm playing 6v6 without the passive. When you're talking about, like, nothing affecting the enemy supports but what directly threatens them, I feel like as Lucio, I can no longer play the AC 130 and bounce around the map and slowly chip down the enemy team's health pool, right? Like, I feel as Ana, when I go to shoot somebody and I hit somebody with a 70 health, 70 damage shot, right? Unless I follow up directly in that moment, I feel like without the passive, I have more options for those levels of aggression. So I think in some cases, and what I want to point out, there's a reason why I think this is really particular, and it is because a lot of higher elos, when they came in and played, said that they kind of liked the support passive. Now we're good. Toastie, our man, he defended it, and we didn't actually go through with it. It's a toggle. If anybody wants to play it, it's an actual toggle and thing. You can just go turn it on and off. But I feel like potentially there's maybe like a phase transition. I don't know how else to explain it, where once you get past a certain level of capability, the support passive itself applies itself differently on the battlefield. That type of splash damage that I can do in Platinum and Diamond that gets some impact on people and then kind of like threatens, when you're in a group of people of like GM players, that's generally trivial. So they would just want to be healed up anyways. They just don't want to wait for someone else to do it for them. There's no answer on that. It's just more of like I'm more interested, and this is more of a raised question as to why people are so different about it. Why do you think? Actually, first, before I ask Toastie this, let's ask Lemon. Lemon, what are your thoughts on the self-heal? Where do you think that hits? Or where do you think that hits your gameplay the most?
I mean, I don't know if I have anything to really add. I do like personally have forcing people to like play around certain positions like health packs, for example.
Okay.
And the thing about the passive is that it kind of makes health packs kind of useless in a lot of situations. Like, I'm not really a fan of that.
Okay. I think we're in agreement. Sorry, Toasty. I know I kind of interrupted you on that, but
sorry.
But yeah, no, I did really want to add that there seems like two different faces to this discussion. Why do you think that is, Toasty?
Well, obviously, just because it affects the high ranks way more than it affects the low ranks. Something that is this fundamental to the game is going to have that sort of impact. The same reason why Sojourn is so dominant in high level play, but nobody knows how to play or low level play. And I may have trouble putting my finger on exactly what's different about those two scenarios, but I know for a fact that people at high ranks would appreciate the passive being on simply because the game probably just moves faster up there, and they won't have situations where it procs nearly as often.
That is something we've noticed for sure, and we brought this up early on, is that, yeah, like at higher elos, that support passive doesn't proc that much. But when you're in a lower elo and people are missing more, there's more downtime, and so we see that passive a lot more. So just more of a again, we don't have any answers on this as much as we have just like a little bit of confusion and our preferences. Do you have anything else you want to add on the support passive at all, Toasty? Something that we maybe haven't thought of, or any concepts on that? I know you've had a lot of discussions with people about it in the past.
I would only be okay with it if it had a fixed duration to kick in for every role, not just supports, and it was like 10 seconds to activation or something. Like,
okay.
you should not be receiving this healing mid-fight. No excuse for it. That just no reason. It skews the amount of resources your team has for no reason.
Absolutely agreed. So we're in preference that we don't, or so we prefer that we don't, or that we don't have it in the game. Some people do. I think this is one of those topics that we're probably going to hear a lot about in the future, especially too as the game mode grows a little bit. But I think Toasty, and this is just my opinion, even though there's some stuff that I don't like in terms of balance and change, I think it's more important that the designer themselves has a goal for the game and builds towards that goal, because the idea of just building to what the community wants has ended up with the Overwatch 2 that we have now, which is a little it's not
That's
in the
hot take to insinuate that this is what the community wanted.
No, this is the result of the community trying to move things and the developers just rolling the dice and trying to move them and figure, like, they're just panicking. They're panic changing things, you know? It's not really like nothing seems like it's actually calculated. There's no calculated moves as much as it is, guys, stop bullying us, we change stuff, okay, leave us alone, kind of thing, you know? But maybe that's just my opinion on their on the
Should we move to a different topic? I think we talked about passive for half an hour or something.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I'm gonna talk about this for hours. We can go in deep, but yeah. All right, passives in general. Anything else major in terms of passives? I guess we've kind of gone over that as a base topic. I do want to ask then roles. We're going to do a general overview of roles. I know there's some people that had some questions about roles, because generally people stick to their own roles. What do you think right now is the most powerful role? What do you think is the go-to in the 6v6 code?
Ask Lemon first. I got to take care of something real quick.
Yeah, sure. Lemon, what do you think? Anything standing out to you as too powerful, or powerful but perfectly powerful, or what's your...
guess if I had like ordered, I'd say tank, support, and then damage. So like I'd say tank is definitely the strongest overall.
Why?
Well, I feel like the potential of tank synergy is just like very powerful, and it's not really being utilized yet. So as a way to account for that, I think the numbers on tanks is a little bit higher than it should be.
A little bit overtuned.
Just very slightly. And like even then, like I'm not that good of a tank myself, even though I do main tank. But I mean, I'm not too concerned about it, because it's like a wait and see until people get used to like the tank format.
Now, is that because of any tanks in particular, or is that just that if you picked any two random tanks, you'd expect them to be exceptionally powerful?
Well, well, I mean, yeah, it's not going to affect every tank synergy equally. But I guess like specific heroes. I guess just like characters that can amplify the other tank. Like I guess Diva is the most clear example of that. Because like once people get better at like playing around the Diva, then the fact that DM is largely better than it is in 1 even right now, like with the cooldown, I'd say that might become an issue. But as of now, it's relatively balanced.
Well, how about in terms of tank synergies then? What's the go-to? What do you think, like, are the old classics, you know, Ryan Zarya, still a relatively powerful thing, or is there a
really
brand new
don't
combo?
know what's best. I mean, I guess based off of the first meta when we initially went to the high ranked players,
Yep.
I think there might be an issue of like the new tanks having less weaknesses than the other ones even right now. Like they have been balanced pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Doom Melga being the initial meta might be a sign that specifically the newer tanks might still be a little bit stronger than the old tanks. Because like
I will add to that, and you did highlight something. I think tanks that don't combo together naturally, when they're both meta, there's probably a problem, right?
Yes.
When you do consider something like Mauga and Doomfist, it's like, where is the synergy? Is there a synergy?
What I would think is that like even if you wanted to play like a comp with a dive and a brawl-ish tank,
yep,
it would make more sense to go, for example, like Doom Queen. Because the Queen's actual like tanking ability can be used with the dive target.
That's where we have to be really.
Person wants to dive.
That's where we have to be really careful, because if you consider double shields back in the old days being something super powerful, those were two tanks that really didn't have synergies together other than just shields, right?
They kind of did with Pull went really well with Sigma's entire kit. Like the Rock, the Prime.
Pull goes well with everything, right? Like
yeah, but like Sig's and whole thing is splash damage. So
yeah, but not as synergistic as like the Pull Hook combo, right? Or like again Ryan Zarya combo
is also
okay. Fill me in real quick.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm curious. I asked Lemon, what do you think is the strongest role right now? Where would your attention be? Like Lemon, for example.
Let's not hijack the conversation. What were y'all specifically talking about?
That's what we're specifically talking about. Lemon says tank is probably one of the stronger roles in the game right now. He says that we are not seeing the maximized synergy of the individual tanks, and that's kind of my argument too. So we're not really finding like what are meta, quote unquote, meta tanks at the moment. But potentially there's much higher, I guess, potential for them to get much more value over time and then potentially be tuned down, right? Is there anything that you see in terms of roles that stands out? And within that, are there combos within those roles that you think might be exceptionally powerful or has potential to shine? Lots of potential there.
I am honestly of the opinion that damage is our most powerful role right now.
Okay. Explain.
I think the argument of tank synergies being possible to maximize and play really consistently with and never give the enemy team an opportunity to fight you is kind of overblown, honestly.
Tank player.
Mainly the one thing that I've noticed is that tanks that are perfectly synergizing together and coordinating and making plays and doing all these crazy things will never get value unless the damage follow up with their engagement.
Okay.
Like you could play tanks that synergize together and never die, but you will never resolve a team fight unless your damage participate. Like if you have bad damage, GG. You literally just can't kill anything.
Well, at risk of seeing this combo for the next 2 weeks until we get a patch out, what DPS players in particular, what combo of DPS players, or what combo of DPS and tank, or what combo of DPS and support do you think stand out to you as
Nope,
something?
doesn't have to be a combo. I literally don't think it's combo related. It's just the fact that I've skewed damage to have good options, good kill potential, good range, good effective range. All these things that like they're good at dealing damage. That's it. They're just good at dealing damage. The tanks are not as good at dealing damage as damage are.
I still do want to keep on that. If you were to combo those together, what do you think ends up being the stronger combo?
I have not specifically thought about combination damage.
Okay.
But I'm sure if like in this context, if there were two heroes that just work together in any context, I don't know, like Genji and Tracer, I guess, if you want me to say something specific.
Yeah.
Like any two damage heroes that have any synergistic play style are probably going to be way more valuable than two tanks that are synergizing anything. Like you can synergize a tank and coordination. You can get your Winston in there, you can DM him, you can bubble him, you can do whatever, and he'll do something. He'll make space, but he won't kill anything unless the enemy team actually just misplays horribly. That won't kill something. The only thing that'll kill something is if a damage player on your team recognizes that space is able to be capitalized on and actually goes in with him and kills something alongside the engagement.
Commits in with
you can still make kills happen as damage on your own by playing flanks, playing patiently, isolating targets, and basically like doing your own thing, but you will not do that on tank. You don't get the privilege to do it on tank because that would yield a lot of map control to do so.
Understood.
I genuinely think like this is probably the ideal way it should be balanced, and in this world I haven't heard damage players complain that their role is weak once. Not in the entirety of 7HS gonna be.
I fully agree. Like I think it feels to me that DPS should have a significantly higher skill ceiling when it comes to like raw mechanics and raw just applications. I don't know. I'm still on the side of tanks being strong, but that's just, again, my opinion. And Toastie's probably seen more games than I have. But I think that's a healthy way for the game to be, is if the DPS should be the killers. They should be the killers. Like, that's the purpose of the DPS, right? And so when they're very strong, when they can have pop up, when they have tons of pop off potential, the game feels good. Disagree? Agree? Where do you sit on that?
That's where it should be. That's why we're at this point. Like, we've deliberately tuned down even the tanks that are like specifically good at dealing damage. They've gotten their damage cut pretty harshly. Maga, Roadhog, Junker Queen have all gotten damage cuts. Okay. Wrecking Ball's burst has been cut. Like, you can name any tank that has any significant damage threat, and it has been cut for this exact purpose, because I don't want them to be very good at dealing that much damage. It's not their role. Okay.
Then let's talk a little bit about the leftover role here, support. Do you think support is in a healthy place right now? Do you feel like there are things that needs to be changed? What are your opinions on the support role at the moment?
I love support right now. Part of the reason why, I mean, like, we'll take out the elephant in the room. Making sure that tanks are not too good at dealing damage kind of is like the silver bullet to making 6v6 work. Okay. You can't go lemon kiwi levels of this change. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, bless you. But
what are you talking about?
I'll get into it later if we really need
to.
No,
get context now. We got listeners. Quickly.
Context now. Fine. Quick. Context. There was an experimental patch that went out near the graveyard season of Overwatch 1 where content creators could propose changes in the game and just have fun doing some wacky things. You remember those, right?
I just
it's exactly what just came out with season 11 with like Eong and all the other people, SK, making those custom balances. There was an Overwatch League caster named Lemon Kiwi that was in charge of doing the tank role, and the thing that they did, blanket statement at the very first, like as soon as that patch went live, the general change they applied to the tank role was to drastically increase their health pools all across the board and cut their damage by 50%. I'm not exaggerating. 50% damage reduction from all tanks across the board. You never killed anything. You never built ult. You just stood there and everybody walked past you.
You're part of the terrain. Yep.
Like, I get why they wanted to do that, but it was way too overblown. They had to hotfix an experimental patch to tune it back to 75% because it was that unplayable. But I'm not here to shit on that patch. I'm here to tell you that that's kind of the inspiration for why tanks are designed like this. They don't need to be like the juggernauts that kill whatever they want in front of them. They just need to have good damage options. But they, under no circumstances, should ever be better at dealing damage than the damage role.
And you think that's really healthy for the support role in particular?
It sure is. Because if you have less damage coming straight to your face from a tank that's pushing you, or your tank is taking less damage because they're trying to fight a frontline brawl, then you have less healing to do. And by extension, you have more damage you can do. And therefore, it is more engaging because you can naturally do damage and healing at the same time. You're not married to the heal bot role of, well, I need to keep my tank alive 24/7 or they will fall over.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And I'll point out, from playing support, it feels really good too. Like, the fact that I can almost 1v1 pretty much anyone, but I have to take it carefully, right? I can't just fight any DPS player. As Ana, you know, my breakpoints, my regular breakpoints are still there, but if I screw up, I'm dead. But if they screw up, they're dead. You know, there's not really there's not that like limbo phase, especially in the existing 5v5 format, where you're just getting punished and all you got to do is just survive and just make your way through it, and it feels like such a weird slog. Being able to I'll even point out, yeah, being able to not contest the tanks, but to push the tanks away or to disincentivize them from jumping me as a support player feels really good. I think that's a good direction. And I'm glad that you actually deliberately thought about that one. That's yeah, I don't know. Lemon, any thoughts on that quickly here?
Nothing really to add.
Agreed on that? Anything you want to add? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't have the receipts on this, but those developer interviews and podcasts that, I guess podcast is the wrong term, but the developer updates that they put out when 5v5 was first being announced, and they were talking about all the trade-offs to this format and why they were transitioning, they specifically mentioned, they went out of their way to say this, that you would be surprised how much damage tank heroes add to a total match of Overwatch. And I think they're completely right. Like, you damage on tanks, especially when they're just fighting each other, can stack pretty quickly. It's the whole reason that they decided to implement Roadhog's like ultimate charge reduction passive that he had in Overwatch.
Absolutely.
You know, the unlisted passive. So like you would be able to dish out so much damage, especially if your tank synergized. Like 2 poke tanks like Sigma and Orisa just hammering you from one angle, like that got lethal fast.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's been a priority to like really make sure tank damage stays where it should be. Because it does have all the benefits that I described. Damage now actually have their role meaningful again. Supports don't have to be married to healing all the time, and they can actually do other things besides healing. It really does work wonders for the amount of like playability of the format.
It especially feels, and this is much my question to you in terms of how you're balancing things. It does feel like a lot of those decisions about how to deal with the other roles comes down to how the tanks apply, right? Like, if the tanks are too oppressive, they oppress the DPS. If they do more damage than the DPS, they basically replace the DPS, right? If they do more damage enough to push the supports out, then they oppress the supports, right? Like, pulling them back. And I believe, too, across the board, most of the changes you've done have actually been to the tanks, right? And doing that to the tanks makes every other role feel better. There's not really been a case, I guess, where pulling back the tanks has made the other roles feel worse. Is there anything that surprised you when you started making those changes that you were like, wow, this is just not a good tank change at all? This is not, this makes other roles and other things feel worse? Or was it just surprisingly good across the board for you?
I've not once regretted tuning back tank damage, if that's what you're insinuating.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you, if there's any regrets on that, but I guess not.
It's been fun, man. I love the way tanks are balanced right now.
And
it's especially like kind of a miracle situation that I didn't expect to happen. It's like even the tanks that are built around just kill trading, Maga, Junker Queen, for example, Doomfist being all in your face, like they have their damage cut. Don't get it twisted, but they're not just killing you instantly on cooldown. They're in like the perfect spot, and they are not super lethal that they can just outbully any other tank that's not designed that similar way as well. You can actually mitigate their damage in some ways.
Well, okay. I have no. Let's go on to the next thing here because I want to jump onto this really quickly. Actually, we'll jump onto one more small topic, and then I'm going to go through some viewer questions that people have in general in chat about. There's people that are like, oh, Toasty, we want questions for him. So we'll get to those in just a second here.
Make sure you put your questions in Twitch chat like right away.
Yes.
Going down all those.
I gotta go for like a minute.
No worries. We're going to be wrapping it up here in a minute anyways, Lemon. So if you have any final thoughts you want to share with anybody, now would be the time. Yeah.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, he's going to be back in a minute. All right, chat. You guys hear that? Okay. I really wanted to add for everybody watching too, Toasty is a tank player, right? He's a that's not main tank, he likes to play Junker Queen, but also plays a variety of other tanks. So it's really interesting coming from somebody who enjoys the role, saying that the role is actually better across the board when it's less powerful. Actually, I'm trying to let me give me a second to try and think about how to word this question, without it sounding too obscure and out of the way. Actually, here's an easy way of putting it. Overwatch 2 tanks have been publicly noted as not being built for 6v6. In your process of making them 6v6 heroes, are there any concepts to you that don't work in 6v6, or are these heroes very much plug and play? Do they work in the 6v6 format with just a few minor changes?
The initial way you phrased that was, if I remember. Sorry, how did you say it beforehand? Like tanks, Overwatch 2 tanks are not designed for 6v6?
Yeah, so there's a lot of criticism that Overwatch 2 tanks are not designed for 6v6, and they would require full reworks to work in 6v6. You being the man that has done that work, do you think that's an impossible Herculean task for Blizzard, or do you think it's perfectly reasonable and just a few little changes here and there? Was it easy for you?
The claim that Overwatch 2 tanks do not fit in 6v6 is bullshit. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Of course they fit in 6v6. It's not hard. I promise you it's not hard. You just have to stop putting head-ass AoE team benefit effects on them. Maga Cardiac does not need to give damage reduction to his allies. You do not need to make Wrecking Ball give adaptive shields to his teammate. Hell, Commanding Shout does not need to give overhealth to your teammates. Like, it is that simple. If they just are tank heroes who have their own tank kit, you're golden. That's it. Good enough. Ramatra fits seamlessly. Maga without that damage reduction, super fun. Junker Queen and Rush comps, instant hit. Like, none of these tanks are impossible to put in 5v5. They literally, as you describe it, plug and play.
And they are so much fun. Oh my god. Even though it's not like super viable, Junker Queen Reinhardt combos, it's just fun to play. That's like a little Zarya there. Like it fits in the whole role of the characters that you're playing, right? Like even to like we've seen like Ramatra Mauga pop out a few times, and that's really interesting, I find, because of course Mauga pops the cardiac overdrive, Ramatra goes into his punch form, and then they phase back into their shield and poke phase, so the shield comes up and then they go back to poke, and there's like a weird synergy that even though these tanks aren't quote-unquote built for 6v6, they work so well in 6v6. If you guys haven't tried them and you're listening to it, definitely jump in it, because it is I don't know, yeah, it feels like these were built for 6v6. Am I wrong, Toasty?
It feels like Overwatch 2 is something they put together in a month. And they had all this content lined up to begin with. Like they intended for this to all be 6v6 to begin with.
Exactly.
They just had to switch gears in a month or something. That's what it feels like to me.
And then they added, oh, what if tanks press a button and give everybody else health, right? And then that was like the standard, like, fall back to every single situation. I think if there's a lesson we can learn from this, is like, don't listen to Blizzard. No, but also too, Blizzard somehow unintentionally makes things really, really fun, but not in the conditions that they put them in. Right? Like these tanks are. What do you think, Lemon? You're back, right?
Yeah, I was gone. Oh, am I quiet again?
No, you're good. You're good. In terms of tank combos, like I'm curious what your thoughts are of Overwatch 2 tanks in 6v6. Have you been enjoying them, or
I guess I don't have anything really new to say. They do just sort of fit.
They do fit,
I guess another comp I could mention is Sigma Maga.
Sigma and Mauga.
Yep.
That's
the thing is that like there are like Mauga is mainly like a brawl, but he does like have functional like, especially since the trade-off of damage for the easier ignite, it makes him better at like shooting squishies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like using just like the two fires separately does make him work in a poke scenario, similar to like Orisa or Ramatra.
Okay.
But then also the thing of like what like if there's like a Maga mirror, then Sig specifically is really good at helping with that, and I kind of like the interaction.
I too. I think it's a lot of fun. They're weirdly, I don't know. Even though they're not built for it, you still have like the push and pull of the two tanks of the original Overwatch. So I think Rein Zarya is like the key. Like Rein Zarya is like, I don't know, the foundation for how tank combos should kind of work. And then, but they've built off of it with these other tanks. You know, the like Mauga and Sigma and yeah. Anyways, there's a lot of those kind of weird combos I think And I do think it'd be really easy for Blizzard to go back to 6v6, but that'll be a whole other discussion. Okay. We're going to wrap it up a little bit here. We do have some questions from chat I'm going to go through. So guys, if you have questions, do them right now. If not, I'm still going to go through my chat and kind of follow up on the things people have asked along the way. Before we get into questions directly, I'm going to ask both you guys, and we'll start with Lemon. If there was one thing that you could ask Blizzard to change in the workshop, what would it be? If I could drag a developer in and say, you have to do what Lemon says, Lemon, what would you make them do?
There's just two things. I'm sorry. There just has to be two things, but...
Wish for more wishes, I guess.
Passive toggles and echo duplicate working with the hero rules.
Okay, so yeah, just turning on and off the passives with a single flick of a button, but then also to matching the changes that you do on a hero on Echo's duplicate. Correct?
Yes.
That's...
Like, I know there's other stuff, but that's like the bare minimum I'd ask.
That's the one that really bugs them. How about you, Toasty? If we were to drag in that dev, what would you tell him? What would you have him do?
Removing legacy content from the game. You already coded it. You already did the VFX for it. You already recorded the voice lines. Let me use fucking Rising Uppercut on Doomfist.
Yes.
Let me use Orisa Halt. There's no... I know these aren't in 5v5. I know you don't have any plans of using these in the future. But there's no reason you should take them out of the game entirely.
Yeah, they added back an up-to-date halt asset, by the way.
Great. Amazing. Absolutely perfect. So let me fucking use it. I don't have plans. I don't have any plans for it, but let me do it.
Like, what do you even use halt or like?
I
for
don't
example,
have
like,
any plans. I don't have any plans.
You wouldn't even replace the spear.
I wouldn't use it.
Halt.
No, I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use it. I literally would not use it for 66 adjustments. But let me fucking use it anyway.
I do personally.
Zero reason it shouldn't be there.
Probably better for rest in a 6v6 environment than the spear throw. But
probably.
Like,
that's probably true. It's not part of my consideration right now. I just want the point to be made that there's no reason for it to not be an option.
I didn't think of it that way, but I absolutely agree. If something existed in the game previously, we should just be able to import with a function, and then that is a new ability on the character, right? You're swapping out an old ability for a new ability, and you get all of the visuals, and you get all of the voice lines, and you get everything. That removing stuff. For me, it aligns very much with what Toasty's saying. We gotta stop breaking old tools, okay? Old ways of doing things. Stuff like us loading in custom workshop stuff and having it default as April Fools is the worst when it comes to developing and building tools, right? The worst thing when it comes in terms of maintaining a custom game mode or maintaining any type of code in general. Like, just give us some type of legacy access and stop breaking the things that previously worked. Because I've had my own game modes that I've shoddily put together get completely destroyed because an update just changes the way an ability works or changes the way interaction works or just stops working altogether, right? If I had that ability to load the game up and then my hero changes and custom changes, they all worked as is, and I had my old ability even after a rework, or I had my old functions after a rework, oh my god, life would be so much easier, and we would like make the game for Overwatch. Fuck it, they can get rid of their devs, we'll just make the game for them at that point. Anyways, those are our three asks, our big asks right now. So at the very rare chance we get a Blizzard developer in here, there's some kind of at least something in the future. So hi, I don't know if anybody's there. Let's go over some questions, some stuff that people had in chat with you guys. I don't know if they're in chat anymore. We've been talking for a little bit, but I still want to be able to answer them, and we'll be putting this up as a VOD a little bit later. So of course people can go and find their questions. So for example, and we'll start with Fox Phoenix's question. There's a question for later, most specifically for Toasty, XD, and Lemon. As it is right now, the workshop is extremely limited. Is there anything you, the devs, would like to do to the workshop? Actually, well, aka models, easier to code, workshop, and so on. So I did ask about like if we had a developer in here, but what are your like, I can take a look at this question. What are your like dreams? What is like the totally out there things that you would guys like to see in terms of the workshop?
As like out there as I can get. Ooh.
Yeah, if you could go crazy with it. To me, it's a map editor.
Consistently. Start there. Like that might be unreasonable. It might be too down to earth. I want it to actually do its basic functions personally.
Okay.
You know, that might be a hot take, but
I think that's pretty simple. To me, my extreme would be like, we need a map editor and a hero editor, right? Like, that would be like the key thing. If we could import our own heroes, woo, that would be some fun Overwatch. But anything else, Lemon, anything comes to mind for you?
I mean, honestly, the only thing I'd ask for the workshop itself would be just updating the new heroes to function with what's currently available.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what I meant.
Like, honestly, because a lot of the things that's annoying about like working with the workshop could also just be fixed by like the baseline custom settings being like more adaptable.
Okay.
Like, for example, like everything that you can change with heroes is done on a percentile. That is very stupid.
Yeah,
It doesn't function because you want abilities to like, you don't want abilities to like a point something damage, for example, a lot of the time. Health pools. There's an entire system that's used to set health pools with like a workshop bug. When we should just be able to change each health pool separately.
Yeah, just set the values in a configuration.
Yeah, that's like one of the biggest secrets in the actual back end of the code is like the way we set custom health for every character is actually a bug. And if it ever gets patched randomly, we are fucked.
Oh, that's a little scary. No, hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't touch it. All right, next question here. We'll rip on. We understand that we've been over a bunch of the code stuff already. What our expectations are. But I do agree. There's like a million wants that we could have, of course, with the workshop game mode. But this is mostly for balance. This kind of question. Where is it? So Phoenix also asks, I am a support main myself, more specifically Mercy and Brig main. Are there any changes upcoming for those two heroes, Mercy and Brig, or are there any changes coming for the support role? Mostly a Toasty question. Mercy
and Brig. Ooh, yeah, actually, that's a good point. Those are like the two supports that I sort of ignored for a little bit. We already talked about Brig. Mm-hmm. We touched on that earlier, how I'm not satisfied with the value you can get on Brig. Then I think what we landed on was we probably want to look towards Repair Pack, because that's the most consistent, or like, sorry, not consistent, but the most unique healing that character does. So, let's think about this for Mercy. I already tried doing a lot of things like hands-on with Mercy, and I firstly wanted to try like working with Guardian Angel, because Mercy players love to bitch about the movement on that ability, and I tried getting it to work, but unfortunately there's no way to detect when it's actually being used. You can still technically be holding down the Guardian Angel and not doing anything with it, not being flying to a teammate, not aiming at anything, and even if you're just standing still holding left shift, the ability counts as being used. So therefore, there's no way for us to There's no way for us to actually track when something happened with Guardian Angel.
I want to explain this, because like even if you like look at the hero, if you press the input button, you can see that it activates even on your screen for like
exactly
a second.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Guardian Angel
for no reason.
So Guardian Angel's like off the table for working on that, unfortunately.
To be a little more specific for our listeners, what they're saying is that even though the ability isn't activating on the end of the server, meaning you're not actively receiving any movement or perk or whatever from it, the code itself is executing. It's saying, hey, this ability is being used. So when we're trying to build something specifically for that type of ability, it becomes impossible, because most of changing ability involves detecting whether or not the ability is being used. You don't want something to execute when it's not actually being used, even if it's saying it's being used. So that's where their difficulty comes from. Sorry, Toasty, more on Mercy. Go ahead.
That being said, the recent creator card experimental that SK was responsible for making has actually kind of gotten me inspired on what else I can do with Mercy. Like something super minor, like maybe we could just reset the Guardian Angel cooldown when you use Valkyrie. So no matter what, you can like pop it and then fly away somewhere.
Doesn't it already do that? I thought it did.
Well, maybe it does. I don't know. Shows how much I play Mercy, bro.
I have all the changes up right now.
Incremental changes. I think that's probably a better answer on that, is that we're not going to be looking at like large reworks for Mercy.
X and the person's name, they just lowered the overall cooldown. The change where you reset in alt is part of the main game.
Oh,
Really?
well, there we go. Okay.
You think about lowering the cooldown? Maybe you can do that.
Definitely not.
Possibly, but just to answer that question, like I say, if we were to change those heroes, it would be more of a push in a direction, a very subtle push towards certain power levels. It wouldn't be anything like reworking the hero ability or, like changing the overall interactions or breakpoints of the hero. So you can't expect too much from that. And I think to Toasty, the answer is like you just don't have anything planned right now. There's nothing in the pipeline for that.
Oh wait,
Not for
Toasty.
Mercy specifically.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question here. Real Gulag Boy says, how do you guys plan to handle the Cass post-Hinder rework? So are you planning to like change something with that at all, or is it seemingly in a healthy spot?
So it's been a day, and I have no data on how that actually feels. People who have been playing 5v5 a lot are responding pretty well to it. They actually appreciate the fact that it has a very definitive range on effectiveness to it. They also appreciate how snappy and consistent it feels.
Mm-hmm.
And it also isn't a death sentence to be hit by it, because like more consistently when you can be affected by it, so you can at least plan around it better. I think in all terms, it's just a better cooldown than Magnetic Grenade ever was. So that being said, I actually don't know if we need to change it yet. It seems okay. 50% slow is kind of a lot, but I don't think that's going to be a problem.
It's definitely another one of those things where if it needs changing, it's just going to be pushed slightly in one direction in terms of power, right?
Yeah, I love the functionality of it, for sure.
Yeah. If it ends up that it becomes too commonly used and people hate it, you will pull back the cooldown, or maybe there's other small changes we could do with the timing. Who knows what workshop interactions are allowed with that thing since they changed it. Because they seem to just like YOLO code left and right and not really care. But there is a lot of opportunities for that, but it seems like a good cooldown. It seems like something we like to keep. And there are obviously alternatives to that, but I don't know if it matters too much. Digging through too, doesn't look like there's many in terms of questions. I will give you guys one more quick opportunity to, like I said, lots of little comments about what we were talking about. But if you guys have any specific questions for Toasty involving balance, I think we've gone over 99% of the stuff that there is to go over. Obviously, we could go way more in depth about how these abilities work, but we do want to kind of keep everything at a reasonable amount of time here. I'm not seeing any comments or anything like that. Everyone's probably just chilling right now. Okay, to wrap it up, I will ask Toasty and Lemon, is there anything that you guys would like to put on the record right now? It could be future projections in terms of how you're going to balance things. It could be responding to general comments that you get all the time about what to change. It could be just, I'm not fucking touching that hero. You guys got to stop suggesting me, Is there anything that you would like to wrap this up with as the final say on the record?
Do we want to address the Genji patch?
Genji, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Dude, I don't know. I just prefer deflect over having more damage when you don't actually need it to do your job.
So first, before we talk about what the changes are, Toasty, can you prep us with what your idea was behind, first what was changed, and then what your ideas behind the changes are. Yeah, from there.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, at some point we were finding that Genji was getting a lot of value on our 66 code because of those increased projectile sizes, alongside some of the damage increases we gave shurikens was causing him to get like way too much value from being in your face. And everybody was at the point where they're like, well, why don't we just nerf the damage? Damage seems like the best case to go on here, right? But as I've described previously in this discussion so far, do not like reducing damage as it's like the blanket solution. I really appreciate when characters have that lethality, those quick, awesome combos and those pop-off moments. So I was really hesitant to do anything about it, but it got so out of hand that Genji was winning like almost every game he was being unmirrored in. So something had to be done. And obviously with that concern being forefront, I wanted to start thinking out of the box. So what we changed was the most controversial thing I've done on this code to this day. Yeah. We reverted, this is not a change, I'm going to say it as a revert because I want to be very clear. We reverted Genji's deflect duration from 2 to 1.5 seconds. You can still cancel it, but it only lasts at most 1.5 seconds long. And it has been met with a lot of contention. I'm not gonna lie. People have vocalized their opinions, but like almost equally on both sides. Some people really like it, some people don't. But I will go ahead and mention it has completely solved the problem. Now Genji doesn't have an extended window of time to bail himself out of a situation that he might have gotten too deep in. You have to be a bit more careful about when you're going in to actually close out a kill, because you don't have 2 full seconds of damage mitigation to plaster in front of somebody to help you win a duel.
It definitely feels better to play against as a support player rather than have, you know, like there's many times when I've been jumped by Genji and I'm like waiting for Reflect to go down and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go grab a coffee, I'll be back. But then it's like, oh, it's down already. Oh, sweet, you know, I can fire it again. So it feels good playing against him. We had a lot of Genji players complain about it. Can I really like, and I know you mentioned a few kind of ideas on that, but what was the key decision behind shortening that cooldown? What was the thing that made you go like, you know what, that's where I'm gonna do it? And it could be just like you wanted to just change power a little bit. It could be that that was the easiest workshop code thing to change. Why particularly aim at the Reflect?
So, okay. This goes for any hero, not just Genji, but when I get a lot of complaints that something needs to be done about any particular hero, whether it be too good or too bad, in any case, I do a lot of research depending on like what exactly we want to change. And some people may always like find ways to tell you like, oh, this character is too strong, we need to nerf their damage or something like that. It's never usually that simple. I mean, sometimes it is, but there's probably a reason why that's happening all of a sudden that you need to look into. And I started combing through like patch note history of like Genji being changed throughout the years, and was reminded that there was at one point in Overwatch 1 where they really power crept that character. Like they get like this. There was a time when Genji had less maximum ammo, less damage on shurikens, less deflect duration, longer deflect cooldown. Like all these things were different, but it just kept getting like hit with power creep over and over again. And I'm like, well, this is probably the answer right here. Why don't we revert one of these power creep changes that was happening during when like poke meta was dominant? And guess what? That's exactly what the problem was. Is, as I described, he was just getting too much value, too long for being too safe and unpunishable. So you still have those pop-up moments as Genji now where you can find ways to put damage in meaningful places and execute people really fast. But you have to be more deliberate on when you go for them because you don't have as much deflect to work with.
And Genji's still popping off like crazy. We're still seeing 5Ks left and right with him. So
still totally pop off as that character, but you're not going to do it so freely.
And
his actual win rate has gotten like right back to where it should be from that one simple change.
And it's less of a denial thing. Denial ability is always a suck. So removing more like a small percentage of denial when it comes to him being up in someone's face just makes the game feel faster, moves faster, and makes the combat. Well, it's a 25%, reduction, right? Yeah, it's literally 25.
Big deal.
Right? It's a huge reduction in the amount of uptime of something in your face that's going to kill you if you shoot at it, right? Like that's it feels good. I will ask Lemon as he's sitting here, do you have anything like in terms of your experience with that you want to add? Do you like it? Not like it? What are your...
I think now that I actually heard the explanation, I think it might actually make more sense. I mean, I still don't think he needs the extra damage. Because like when I asked you about initially, you mentioned like it doesn't change breakpoints of squishies, but you do more damage to tanks. I kind of didn't really understand that, but what you just explained makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Cool. Glad we're all on the same page then.
Excellent.
I will also note something very similar happened when we were having to address Doomfist.
Okay.
People were starting to optimize our code when it got handed to top 500 scrim lobbies.
Yeah.
And Doomfist Maga, as we've said before, was like emerging as a really meta comp. And the only reason that comp was meta is because you kind of had to play on their terms, and you would just never have a window of opportunity. Because when Maga pressed the funny haha ability and gave his whole team lifesteal, Doomfist AoE punching or AoE slamming anything would just magically give you a new health bar. It was crazy amounts of lifesteal.
Yeah.
So that combined with Doomfist also having power block on hand to like cover for his Maga or cover for downtime, and also CCing the enemy team away from his Maga whenever they didn't want to fight, and just playing for that cooldown rotation, you just kind of didn't have an opportunity to kill them. And so we addressed this by, of course, Maga doesn't have damage reduction anymore, so that's a big one. But Doomfist Power Block also had its duration cut, so you don't get to stand there and just wait to absorb damage for as long, because like you're not going to pierce that through raw damage. You either need to bypass it or stun it somehow to get any damage onto Doomfist. But if all of a sudden he has a whole less second to stand there with it, well, then that also cuts the cooldown rotation without actively harming the cooldown rotation of both the characters, because you don't have as much time to stall for it being available again.
I think that actually wonderfully wraps this into a nice circle where you brought up at the very start that if a character is going to have kind of like a strong, we were talking about one-shots originally, but like a strong presence in some way, there does have to be like a little bit of a downtime. There has to be something like they're going to be very strong in the moment when they're up in front, and then when they're not fully committing to anything, that they're a little bit weaker and they're easier to push. And that feels like a really healthy, again, a really healthy way to push the game. Everybody seems to like it so far. We've got very little complaints in terms of the overall feel, and even so, the people that complain the most are playing like 8 hours of of pugs in some cases. So, you know, even though they're complaining the whole time, it seems like they're having a blast because they're coming back. You know, it's right. So overall, and actually, let's just wrap this up. We'll call this as is. So if anybody's listening right now and they haven't played 7HSKW, please, the 6v6 game mode, please jump on in. We pretty much have games going almost every single day, if not a few times a week anyways. There's a wonderful group of people. We actually have a competitive system where you can rank yourself up and down, and it's not perfect, but it's fun. At least it keeps the games moving. We also, too, guys, have a Patreon, patreon.com/6v6. So if you're a fan of 6v6 in any way and you want to help support Toastie and Lemon and XD and potentially have, you know, competitions or tournaments, and we're still up in the air about figuring this out, you know, $5 a month, $1 a month, any whatever helps out there. You know, it's surprisingly, you know, actually, surprisingly, we got a lot of support right away when we released it, which I'm really happy and hoping that we can put together some real top tier players and actually pit them up against each other in some kind of actual tournament to see where this game mode settles down in terms of the meta. So that's really, really exciting too. Of course, too, guys, I also have my own Patreon, patreon.com/Scrub Club, if you want to do community events, if you like these kind of talks and stuff like that, so you can feel free to support me there. Lemon Toasty, do you guys want to pitch out your Twitter, your Twitch, anything like that? Any socials you guys want to get out there?
I have nothing to plug.
Toasty is on Twitter on x.com, i.e. Toasty. Go. It's okay. Why not? Okay, I won't say anything then. He's got some good takes sometimes. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, all right. Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap the stream up here. I appreciate everybody coming out. We're gonna go raid out. Let's go raid out to Samito. We'll go say hi to him. Of course, he has been a wonderful supporter of this project. He's pushed a lot of community members towards the Discord, and so we can do nothing but thank him and all that kind of stuff. I think he's a big 6v6 fan. I've listened to many hours of him say how 6v6 is better. So we'll go say hi to him. All right, guys, I love you all. I will see you all later. This will, of course, be going up on the actually probably go up on the Sulack Streams channel, and then I'll post it in the Discord, and we'll see you from there.